I've been banging my head against my lab bench, but I got the pleasure of killing 22 mice yesterday because they really frustrated the living hell out of me.
Okay,
But yeah, and I got all
Nothing
their
much, really,
brains
just hanging
stored in
out.
paraformaldehyde, so
John?
gonna be working on that next week.
Okay, cool dude.
Y'all are gonna get more exciting in that intro. I was like, it's the LAN, bitch. Anyway, this week has been extravagantly boring. Yeah,
Okay.
been modifying parts for the same part for probably 3 days now, so I am completely uneventful. Besides, I'm doing homework, which is still uneventful because I've been doing that for 5 weeks now. So fuck my life.
Okay. So,
Next.
Nugget Ninja?
Nothing. I've done jack all this week. Yeah.
And I'm just going to call you Tracer because I don't know how to actually say your name, Wolfenben.
It's okay. So I worked today and I worked on my novella. I actually just got done recently writing an intense action scene where the main character is actually hanging out of the window of the car.
Spoilers.
I'm not spoiling anything. I'm the writer. I could spoil it later if I want to. So yeah, I wrote that.
Okay. So let's move on to this first topic here. It's Linux on 8-bit micro. So you have that lesser shoe. Not sure.
It's all right. Yeah, this one was requested by the audience. A little bit of an older one, but still pretty interesting. This guy managed to get Linux to boot up on an 8-bit system, along with using some solder, some old SORAM as well. He has it all running through an AT Mega. How he managed to do this, not using a 32-bit CPU, which is kind of the bare bones of what you need for Linux, he basically wrote up an ARM emulator and compiler to run on top of the 8-bit to emulate a 32-bit ARM machine. And it takes about 2 hours to boot, and he said it takes significantly longer if you want a GUI. It's a neat thought experiment. No real useful applications, kind of just to be able to say you did.
Okay. Let's see. So topic 2 is Newegg is now owned by a Chinese company. Tracer, you've got that one.
Okay, so this one is kind of an interesting one because there's a little more to it than they're just owned by a Chinese company. So the big thing is that the actual fact is that Leeson Interactive is a company that bought 55.7% of the stake in Newegg. As for the other 44.3% of the company, we don't know who owns that at the moment. So even though right now, yes, it is owned by the majority of an actual Chinese company, how it'll affect that isn't known right now. It's actually a smart move on Newegg's part to sell these stocks off to a Chinese company for a couple of reasons. The truth of the matter is, we all saw what happened with Tiger Direct. They used to have several stores you could actually go to, and now they're all shut down. Right now, when it comes to technology outlets, the big names that are still up and running right now are Micro Center, NCIX, and you have Newegg. And the other one is, of course, the juggernaut of Amazon. But Amazon is a little bit of everything. So Newegg doing this, in my opinion, is a smart move. The other fact of the matter is that the owner of Newegg is actually of Chinese descent anyways. So it's not that big of a deal. It's not like it's suddenly going to be a horrible company. It's probably going to remain status quo, but they'll get more products from China as a result. and it'll potentially open up so that they can actually operate within China itself, potentially. The details still have to be worked out as to what those details will have to be done. You have to remember this is speculating on my part. This is what I would do if I were Newegg. So that's pretty much it.
Okay, next topic here is the GTX 1050 and 1050 Ti. Pricing is pretty standard of the 1050 series. It's right around $100 to $200 depending on the models, and looks like the 1050 has 640 CUDA cores, and it'll have 2 gigs of memory. And then 1050 Ti is 768 cores and 4 gigs of memory. Looks kind of interesting. Not sure how well it'll perform with compared to the 750 Ti or 950, but yeah. So next topic is...
I would not to interrupt you, but I would just like to add something to that. Red team here, AMD, is responding to this. They've cut the prices of the 470 and the 460, not by much, like $10 in the case of the 470, and the 460 is now $100. That just happened the past few days in an attempt, a bit of a response to compete with these cards. So they're actually trying to get people who are looking at 750 Ti's to go up maybe a step or two, because the 470 will be probably significantly faster. At least AMD's claiming it's 33% faster than the 1050 Ti for a little bit more money. So they're trying to get some of the people who are looking at that card to maybe jump to the 470.
Right, and I would read about that as well, but it was it's good to see that they're having such a, well, not I'm going to say a duel, but they're trying to really one up each other with the pricing scheme, because that's really in our favor at this point.
Yeah, however, this was actually brought up a few days ago on the LAN show, the WAN show, actually, I'm sorry, the other one, by Linus. And he said that the problem with AMD is they make so little on their graphics cards as it is, that these price cuts hurt them in a way, because even if more people are buying them, they're making so little money on their graphics cards as it is. Like they have to kind of, it's a bit of a balancing act for them, because you can only make the graphics card so cheap. So when they start, doing these aggressive price cuts to compete with NVIDIA, sort of out of necessity, the consumer does benefit, but AMD is, of course, their financial situation not great. So it's a thing to think about.
Well, I'm just going to jump in here and also mention the fact that if you consider how high quality components they used on the reference design, and then they're now making it cheap to manufacture, even the reference ones. And then in theory, the add-in board partner should be better quality power color. That's even cutting down to the profit margins even more.
Yeah, and you look at like the 1050 Ti, like their board, like the board is like totally Spartan, and it's incredibly cheaply made. Like that's something people don't realize when they buy NVIDIA cards. They think they're buying a premium product, but when you actually look at it, it's not really made in a very premium way. Yeah, the AMD cards, the reference boards are exceptionally well designed and better than most aftermarket NVIDIA cards. So
power color.
No, I was going to say that I think that the reason, I think we all know that they're just trying to get a bigger share of the graphics card market, at least until Vega comes in and hopefully takes a bigger chunk for the purposes of competition here. But yeah, this kind of reminds me of OnePlus when they with their first model, when they were just making literally single dollar profit margins on every phone that they sold. So I'm kind of wondering if that's why in the beginning we had the shortage in supply with the 480s and all that stuff, because the price was already so low that they couldn't afford to not sell any product or something along those lines. I'm not really sure.
Perhaps, and the big thing that Vega will come to capture more of the market, and then of course on the higher end cards, the margins are much better on the higher end cards, so that'll really help AMD out. But they need to hurry up with that.
Yeah, that and Zen faster, please.
Yeah,
soon.
Okay, so next topic we have here is the video game voice actors are striking, and Tracer, you also have this one?
That's correct. Okay, so this issue is a little more complicated than the news outlets are making. So, voice actor that I followed through the years is Steve Bloom, who's doing on the voice of Spike Spiegel and various other characters. He's been in the industry for 30 years. And I actually listened to him talking about what was actually going on because he was relatively quiet on the whole matter. And one of the things that I actually learned is that the voice actors in video games are operating under the contract that's from 1990 for video games. And one of the things in that contract is that they're required within this contract for all video games to scream for a solid 4 hours in every video game. All voice actors, doesn't matter who they are, 4 hours screaming, solid. So of course, as a voice actor, they are concerned that this is going to destroy their voice. That's going to stress it out. They're okay with doing 2 hours as long as they, then get a break after the 2 hours. So what they're asking for, the main thing is the stress on the voice. The other thing is pay for stunts, because now they're requiring motion capturing, as well as proper supervision, because not all studios are providing that proper supervision. And they do want better pay for their voice acting, just a little bit better, but not so much that it would take away from what the developers are doing. It's more so they want to see royalties from these multi-million-dollar games that they are providing their voices for. And they also want it just for the voice thing. They're like, the developers need to work out their own thing with the publishers. We're trying to do what's best for us at the moment. Now, the thing is that I actually also remember something similar happening, and I don't know if anyone remembers this, but the great 2008 writer's strike, if I remember correctly. Now, it's something similar where it came to when it was the distribution of digital content. The writers weren't getting royalties from the sales of digital stuff. So you have something similar when it comes to the voice acting, is that they aren't seeing any residuals from the video games after it's released. They get paid a small royalty fee, like very small, from 1990, that isn't adjusted for inflation. And I'm sure I don't need to tell any of you that inflation has changed since 1990. So that's pretty much what's going on with the voice actors strike at the moment. The big companies that it's affecting are EA, Blizzard, a couple other the big ones. But when it comes to the individual voice actors, like voice actors who are not in the union or are not a part of, the one that's in America, they can still do their voice acting. Now, you may be thinking that the voice actors, they're also professional actors, aren't going to go on strike. Well, the thing is, they're actually also a part of the same union. So people like Mark Hamill and whatnot are actually part of this strike as well. So that's pretty much in a nutshell what is going on with the strike. I don't know how long it will last. The writer's strike lasted for about 6 months or 3 months, and that killed a lot of things. One of the things that actually got killed during the writer's strike was, what was it? It was the Justice League film that the guy that made Mad Max Fury Road was working on, got killed as a result of that. Now, the thing that this could affect would be games that are being worked on right now within EA and whatnot that are in development. And in EA, I know one that's in development right now is Mass Effect. So there are video games this will probably potentially delay if they don't negotiate. So
yeah, that's what I was wondering, actually, because with Mass Effect in particular, because they were talking earlier last week about having most of the character dialogue finished, but they said they were talking about most, not all. So I was wondering exactly along those lines is because I think the popular thinking is that's going to be releasing sometime in March. But yeah, that's exactly what I was wondering. Is that going to have an effect on their release dates?
I would say there's a good chance of it. The companies, like the big companies, are within the deals are saying this isn't going to affect it. It probably will. Good example of something that was affected by the writer's strike is the movie. It was a James Bond film that came after Casino Royale. That film,
Quantum of Solace.
yeah, Quantum of Solace was affected by the writer's strike. They only had the first draft, and you can tell it's a first draft. It's not nearly as good as Casino Royale as a result.
Right. I mean, I had noticed as well that that movie was not very. It didn't seem like it was final draft worthy in terms of the story there.
Yeah.
But I kind of was thinking, well, maybe that's just Hollywood. But
I think the response, the demands are pretty reasonable because you look at how much video games are selling, and they're getting up there to the same point as blockbuster movies in revenue. Asking for a little bit more pay when you look at what Hollywood actors are making. Yeah, I know it's a different creature. That's why I'm saying probably not the same amount, but they definitely probably deserve a little bit more than what they're currently being paid.
yeah, I don't think that their demands are a little bit are that unreasonable. But yeah. So I'd like to go in a bit because sticking along the lines of video games, because I think everybody here was familiar with the release of the advertising for the Nintendo Switch, and I think Derek Krieger and I can go a bit into that right now. But yeah, it was something along the lines that we were saying earlier about, yeah, there's a dock. It's going to be a portable device, gaming as you go kind of thing. But yeah, I think that they saw the NVIDIA Shield the other last year or a year before, and they're like, ooh, very good. And I think that's along the lines of what they were thinking. And I think that it's going to be typical with Nintendo in the sense that, yeah, they're trying to go a different method of using the game. I mean, when the Wii came out with the nunchucks and the remote controller, it was a different take on how we look at consoles and how they function with you interacting with the game. And they're trying to recapture that a bit. And like last time, they're using hardware that's, we've had it around for a while, so it's not going to be as big of an expenditure on their part for manufacturing these. But it does look pretty slick.
Yeah, it certainly does look like an interesting concept. I really think you see this partnership that they've done with NVIDIA, and it in many ways makes perfect sense. I off mic, I made a comment saying that it's the NVIDIA Shield 2 Electric Boogaloo, because it essentially is, for all intents and purposes, it's a gaming tablet, although, at least in terms of form factor. Although one interesting thing that was brought up was it doesn't appear to have a touchscreen. At least they didn't show it off in the reveal trailer. So actual functionality as a tablet will probably be limited, but in some ways it's like that. It also brings to mind a product that appeared a few years ago by Razer called the Edge Pro, if anyone's familiar with that.
Yeah.
Which was a tablet with some handles that slid onto the side. The Edge Pro ran full desktop hardware. It ran, well, notebook hardware, I should say, but it did run an Intel i7 and a NVIDIA GT 640 in it. So it was a bit of a different animal. And it actually ran a full version of Windows 8. But it speaks to the same concept. And I think it's not a terrible idea Nintendo has here. I think they really could sell this. However, it's going to come down to third-party support. And
right.
Interestingly, the third parties, they actually showed a few games, and this was brought up elsewhere. They showed Skyrim, and they showed one other title. I forget exactly what title it was now. It's on the tip of my tongue. And then when asked about it, Bethesda and the other company said that we were happy to work with Nintendo on this trailer, but we're not confirming anything at this time. So it springs to mind very much a long time ago when Capcom and a few others made deals about the Wii U, and then before that, the GameCube, promising these titles that would be exclusive and come to the console, and then they either never did or were not exclusive. And Nintendo really needs to lock down that third-party support, because I think that is going to make and break this thing.
Right.
And one last thing I want to add is the controller looks awful, and it looks incredibly uncomfortable. So, and the name is garbage. I'm sorry, just had to say that.
Yeah, I wasn't that impressed with the naming, but I think that's a rather minor detail, and all in all to be worried about. Although I think for marketing purposes, because I have a friend who does marketing, that name product recognition through name is a big deal. So,
oh yeah, it really hurt the Wii U because people thought it was an accessory for the Wii. They didn't actually know what it was, and that was a real problem.
Yeah, but I mean, I think that's kind of funny because the Japanese in general have a really bad time, I think, with video games, with naming either characters or products and getting them over to the West.
Yeah,
it's
the
like,
Japanese name is probably really cool.
I have no doubt it's something much more interesting, but it's just like in America or the West, it's just like, what were you thinking with this name? But yeah, I think that you kind of hit the nail on the head there about the third party support, because of, I mean, I don't know as much about Nintendo because I haven't played any Nintendo based console stuff since like the GameCube back in the early 2000s, because Zelda's really the only thing that ever gave me any interest in Nintendo since the 90s anyway. It's just that, I mean, what is the deal with them in third-party support? Like, are they just way too proprietary with what they allow on their system, or what's the deal?
It stems from, I know we're getting a bit long here, sorry guys, but it does stem, I'll answer this question, it does stem from back in the day of like the Atari 2600 and the original North American video game crash. The third parties got so out of control on these systems that it brought down the quality of games so badly. So Nintendo took this to heart and is really tries to, keep their system closed in some way to protect the brand, but also just honestly gaming as a whole to keep products somewhat high quality. I don't know if it works, and I think it's also just rooted in the Japanese mentality. I mean, pretty much if you work at a Japanese corporation, like you don't get fired anyway. So like they just try to keep. There's not very many new ideas. So those people that made the decisions back then are probably still making decisions now, and you get this kind of thing that sticks.
Yeah, it's an overcompensation of some sort, I guess.
Yep.
All right, I guess we can move on to the next topic at this point.
Yep. Red Dead Redemption 2. So cool dude. Sir. And whoever else wants to talk about it.
This game. See what saddens me immediately is if someone else hasn't posted on the internet yet, I didn't hear anything about a PC release. Is anyone else?
No,
I haven't heard anything about it, and that really pissed me off as well, because I loved the first Red Dead Redemption.
Yes, I'm going to predict that another Grand Theft Auto 5 is going to happen.
We're going to get Red Dead Redemption 2 remastered with first-person support on the PC.
Yes.
I can actually address a potential reason for that. So, with Red Dead Redemption 2, does anyone remember what happened with Grand Theft Auto 4 when it launched and it was a broken mess?
Vaguely.
Yeah, I do.
I mean, it's still a broken mess, but yeah.
All right, so we also remember that we got Grand Theft Auto 2 years later, but when we got it 2 years later, it's still arguably the best version of the game to this day, and it came with like all the bells and whistles. So even though we may be getting it 2 years later, maybe. The good news is that if we do get it, it will be well optimized, because even though it will require us to always be online, that'll probably be there. But at the very least, at least Remedy will, well, not Remedy, Rockstar will be making it themselves instead of handing it off to someone else.
I will counter with this point, though. I don't think that comparison to Grand Theft Auto 4 is necessarily fair, because first off, we had the Games for Windows Live fiasco, if anyone remembers that horror, which was tightly ingrained with Grand Theft Auto 4. But also the development environment that Grand Theft Auto 4 came out of is very different than the games that came out today. Like when they're developing Grand Theft Auto 5 or this game, they're essentially developing for a PC. The Xbox and the PS4, it's PC hardware. I mean, the new PS4 Pro has a fully unlocked Polaris GPU in it. I mean, it's essentially the same hardware minus a few nickels. I don't really think it would have been that much more difficult for them to release it at the same time and have a decent functional product. I really don't think it is. I honestly think it's more just them being greedy, if for the most part.
I would chalk it up to maybe more along the lines of laziness, is because, like Dear Krieger said, consoles have realized for quite some time that the PC has left them behind for quite some time. And previous gen consoles, the 360, the PS3, had very specialized hardware that was not really, is not something that you could pop and had a PC equivalent out on the market anyway. And now as they, yeah, exactly. So if you had issues with it, it was highly customized, and therefore the cost was higher. And, you had to design for something that was pretty different from what you had between what was out for the public on PC and on a console. And like Derek Krieger said, we're moving closer to PC-based hardware. It really is the same thing as a PC. It's just an underpowered PC by today's standards at this point. Although they are trying to catch up, but it's the PCs have been ahead for such a long time now that I think that developers are making a major faux pas at this point, because they're failing to realize that, yes, there are different hardware configurations you'll have to account for, which is going to increase the development time and therefore the cost. But at the same time, the PC market has become such a sizable chunk of potential revenue that I think that they're misstepping here. I mean, greed. I mean, you say it's greed, Dear Krieger, but I think that they're not listening to their greed well enough at this point. They need to take advantage of the situation and get more PC gamers into their sphere of influence and release products that we want to buy.
Yeah, but I will counter with this. There was a study, I don't have it in front of me, sadly, but they actually looked at a lot of the people who bought Grand Theft Auto 5 on PC. And for many people, it was the second purchase of the game. They had bought it on the other console for full price and then bought it again on PC. So I think that has something to do with it.
Yeah, I think that people are creatures of habit. When you're used to playing things on a console, because I have several friends and they've been console peasants for the longest time. And I mean, they know logically that, yes, the PC can definitely pump out some much more impressive frame rates and graphics and what have you. Also mod support depending on the game that you're playing. But they're just so busy, and they just like, okay, I just want something I don't really have to think. I just plug it in and play. I can carry it with me. But although you can easily counter with, there's portable PC or laptop gaming PCs now that you could easily have much better performance with. But I think people really are still stuck in the whole, not everyone obviously, but a good chunk of the gaming community still stuck in the classical mindset of, in my living room, got my console ready to go, and that's all they're really looking for at this point.
Yeah, I agree, and I will finish my thoughts on it with this: that I will be buying this game for my PS4, and I will play the shit out of it because I'm incredibly excited for Grand Theft Horse. I can't wait.
Yeah, this is like the one thing that, well, that and maybe Final Fantasy 15. I was just like, yeah, I may get a PlayStation just for this.
It's the one game that made me cry.
Really? That's it?
Just the one?
Yes.
Lies. He's just one of many.
When John died, man, that was it. That was the end of the fucking world.
Yeah, it was more sad because we had to play with his shitty son. It wasn't as cool.
Yeah, I
his
mean,
voice was crap, and he looked like shit.
Yeah, they did such a good job with that, with the first one, though, that I think they've got some high expectations to meet for the second one here, and which kind of makes me nervous.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a prequel.
That would make me sad.
Well, I mean, what are they going to do? No one likes John's kid, and like, there's so much good material there. They were part of a badass
Jack
gang.
can still be.
Yeah,
cool.
I have a deep passion for westerns, and I think that, like Derek Krieger just said, that there is a lot of story they could dig into from the past, and because the whole, like, they're a damn gang and they're along the border, causing mayhem and all who knows what, pissing off everyone they encountered. I just cannot wait to see all the trouble that he was getting into back in the day that made the federal marshals come after him out that far.
The year that game ended was 1911, so that's pretty much the end of the West. So they may actually go back in time.
Well, yeah, it's a prequel, so I mean, at that turn
Well, we
of the
don't know if
century, it
it's
was
going to be.
pretty
We just know
right.
it's already
But
here
but
too.
if it was though, it was pretty wild out there, even at the turn of the century. I mean, yeah, we'd already been to the West Coast, and California was already. I don't know if the gold rush had occurred at that point, but I think
Yes,
it did. Yeah, but it was still pretty wild. Every man for himself in terms of law enforcement out in that region. Still kind of is in some places. But anyway, I think we can move now on to the next topic here, which was something Caveman and I can talk about, which was the Crosspoint memory release out on desktops, or actually on the market. Really, it's more for servers, I think, at this point.
Yeah,
Caveman, you want to say something on that?
it's an interesting technology because it's not like any other type of memory that we've seen before. It changes data by melting and getting, I think it's silicon or a type of glass.
Well, it's when they say phase change, to be specific, is if you they had a publication that was put out, like this was back when they were first talking about it with the Intel Optane presentation. It's not melting. When they say phase change, it's not like solid to liquid to gas. That's a misleading term that they're using. The phase change aspect involves electrical resistance within each memory cell, and they've established it in a three-dimensional not cubicle. Although I guess they could, yeah, maybe it's cubicle, but in terms of the whole thing. But each unit can be individually accessed, and the electrical resistance of the actual memory cell versus the cross bridge material is what enables it to do binary logic with zeros and ones. And so when they say phase change, it's really a misleading term that they're using. It's not a chemistry based one. It's more of a electronics based term that they're using when they say that.
Yeah, but the idea anyway is that it changes phases, and then that's a 0 or a 1.
Right, but yeah, I mean, I think everyone here, maybe even most of the audience, knows that the real bang for the buck here isn't just that. Yeah, it's a lot faster than flash memory, which I'm just like drooling over. It's 1,000 times faster. But although that's marketing, so we'll see once it gets to read write speed what it really comes down to when it hits for servers this year. But it's more for me that that it's going to last a lot longer, and that it's like it'll be probably something of a bridge right now between DRAM, which is still a lot faster, I think, and then making storage less of a bottleneck at that point, because the bandwidth wise, I think it's an issue of like what is slowing down whatever you're trying to do the most at this point. I think right now it can be easily made, the argument can easily be made that it really is storage that slows us down more than anything, even with flash memory. And this is going to be a pretty significant step, just like when we were going from hard drive disk platters to flash memory. It was a pretty big jump the first time I put a solid state drive in my computer. It was a night and day difference. So I think this will be something along those lines of difference in how we access information. Especially, my thoughts is my curiosity is mainly aimed towards gaming at this point. It's like, oh, how long can we wait to load a texture or to load up a map for a loading screen?
I don't know. I was actually looking at the read and write speeds on the prototypes they have here, and they're actually not that fast, but the randoms are the things that are insane.
Oh, okay. Never mind.
On the smaller one, the 16 gig one, it says the sequential writes are only 300 megabytes per second, which is slower.
The article I was reading was saying that, yeah, the small capacity ones are significantly slower than the high capacity ones.
Even then, the write's only 500. But I think what we're seeing is the read is like 14 and 1600 megabytes per second, respectively, on the smaller and bigger ones. But the IOPS are 300,000 IOPS.
Yeah, that's really what I was more along the lines of referring to with the speed. But plus, it's the whole durability here. I just think that right now I was reading one article. They were talking about the frustrations from the OEMs because only Intel and Micron are going to be cranking this stuff out for for the beginning of its release here. So you're not going to have as much support for making this widespread if you don't have a lot of vendors pumping it out. So my thoughts are, my curiosity also moves towards, are we going to see Samsung releasing some, or TSMC? Are they going to be cranking out anything like this? Because the more people, more foundries that are pumping it out, the quicker the adoption rate is going to happen.
I'm pretty sure it's a partnership between Intel and who is it again?
Micron.
Yeah, Micron, because they were at my university and talking about it, and they didn't mention anyone else. So.
Right, and the article I was reading was there was another vendor, and the guy was frustrated because he's like, they won't tell us anything about it, like in terms of the details of how they're fabricating it exactly. So I'm hoping it's not that they're not going to put a proprietary stamp on it so nobody else can produce it. If that happens, just forget it in terms of it coming out like widespread adoption really quickly. It's going to take quite a few years before you're going to be seeing it in your desktop.
Yeah, and another thing is too, I don't know if you mentioned this because I did step away for a minute, but it's only supported on Kaby Lake CPUs and newer.
Right. Yeah. Older hardware is not going to, base machines are not going to be an option for upgrades there.
Yeah, if it goes the way of Rambus RAM, well, yeah. But we should probably move on to the next topic here, which is this PowerPC Power 8 workstation that's going up for crowdfunding. So, Sergeant Awesome Sauce was supposed to cover this, but I'll do it quickly here. It looks like someone is trying to crowdfund a PowerPC workstation board that's based off the IBM Power 8 processor, which the specs are pretty changeable, but up to 12 cores and, well, typical server specs, so yeah. And then
This is very much an Aramis topic.
Yeah, that would be something he would
Unfortunately, none of us are Aramis.
yeah.
Unfortunately.
Okay, so next topic is the Samsung launching the quantum dot display. So
No, I was going to ask if anybody had actually claimed that topic.
Okay, you know. Just skip my topic. Dude, that's cool.
Haven't they had quantum dot monitors for a while? I thought these were like new ones.
No, they only had TVs.
Oh, okay.
Actually, someone can tell me what the hell is quantum dot like display techniques. Like, what is the difference between that versus TN panels or IPAs? How's it work?
Linus has a good video on it. It's instead of an array of pixels, it's an array of dots. I mean, really.
Yeah, it's supposed to like combine the best of like IPS and TN. Like, so you're supposed to get fairly good true colors, but very fast response time.
Viewing angles too.
The VA panel, 170 degree ultra wide viewing angles, whatever. It's curved, 16 by 9. 144 hertz, whatever.
Right, but I think that the
125% sRGB spectrum. What?
That's interesting. Well, I was going to say though, concerning that this is going to be like a CES kind of display. It seems like we're not going to be seeing this something that we can really put on our desks anytime soon.
It's 1080p.
1080p.
Yeah. It's 144 hertz though, isn't it?
Yeah, but still.
I thought we graduated past 1080p by now.
Yeah, it's been so standard for such a long time on PC. It just is like that seems a little light in the loafers for technical specifications on release there.
Really,
at least give me some 1440p
color.
What was that?
It's just a monitor with good color. I mean, honestly,
well, that
every
has
other
some
feature you can get a different monitor.
That has some applications for certain people, but I don't think the target of that also like necessarily needs 144 hertz. Like if you're doing Photoshop work.
I don't think there's, unless someone plays CS:GO and then photo edit screenshots. Just, no.
I was thinking maybe DSR might be useful on that, but I don't know about that.
Well, DSR is always useful because it looks better and is less of a performance hit than most anti-aliasing. So
Yeah, just I don't know. I'd be curious to see what the actual
It actually does have a
performance
rather
is.
aggressive curve.
Huh?
1800R.
Okay, well, I guess we can
Yeah.
move on to the next topic then.
Which is going to be nuggets with the
Yes.
because
So-
I accidentally skipped over it.
Oh boy.
So, TLDR is China. Long
China.
version is, yep. The long version is, a man had a Kickstarter, as many people do nowadays, and his Kickstarter was a cell phone case, particularly for the iPhone 6 and 6 Plus, of course, that had a selfie stick built into it. And so he designs it. He has these designs up on Kickstarter, and his estimated cost was around $47. That's how much he estimated they were going to cost to produce, I do believe. Or was it, that's the selling price? Either way, if it's even the selling price, then imagine he's making even any profit on it. So he's at least $10 is going to be what he's going to be costing him to make this. So then China comes in, a Chinese company comes in and starts making it, stole his designs, and it's extremely, extremely similar to the point of, everyone's people are convinced that it has actually stolen design, not just a coincidence, which it could be. And they're making it, and it sells for around $8 on AliExpress. And, of course, it's just China, they have the lack of care for copyright laws. So they can just do this all they want, and nobody is really stopping them.
Yeah, I see that comment on the stream. It just said no holds barred capitalism.
Yeah. Yeah, they're selling it for $8.18 on Alibaba. And he was going to sell them for $47.41. Thus, imagine how much it's going to cost him to produce, even if he's making 100% profit, at least $20. And if it was 200%, then, etc. Still, it's a lot of money. So, a lot of people on the Kickstarter expressed a lot of concern and were pretty angry about this. Of course, because now there's one they can get for way less from China. So, people.
Yeah, my thinking is what's going to stop this if this is just blatant theft of the ID in the intellectual property here. What's going to stop China from just sniffing through a Kickstarter campaign? It's like, oh, very good idea. I think we'll just take that. Thank you very much, and then just run with it.
Nothing, and that's another problem of crowdfunding of these ideas and everything. It's just one thing after another. I'm sure the politicians will be using this as an excuse for TPP and why we need all this special copyright protection.
Oh yeah, because that's what I was wondering is like, would a patent even matter to the Chinese? Like, would this even have any?
They don't matter.
Yeah, I didn't think it would. Like, they would have no respect for that in the first place.
The Chinese copy products all the time like that. And the U.S., the United States government, could, in theory, stop them. But there's those checks, so...
Yeah, and, I mean, you see this a lot. The really interesting one is cars. Like, a lot of Chinese auto companies have been copying Western cars.
BMW.
Yeah, BMW, the X5, the Mini, a few others. And
they took they made the GMC version of a Chevy Silverado, exact copy, just with a different logo.
Yep. And they've been sued, and the Chinese government has said, "What are you talking about? It looks nothing like that." And
I know, it's just like, we're not going to pay you shit.
I think maybe if they opened their eyes a little bit more, they'd be able to see it.
That's subtle racism brought to you by the lounge.
I approve, Nugget. I approve.
I had to. It was so easy.
This is the perfect setup.
Oh, yep.
Speaking of
It's-
keeping your eyes open, let's move on to Valve's VR headset.
So this is specifically we're going to be talking about the controller. I mean, as anyone who's used a Vive or some of those,
I have.
yeah, the controllers that it comes with they work, but they're not the best thing. They're kind of bulky. They're not great. And I think people will actually say that the Oculus Touch controllers are probably better than the current Vive controllers. So this is really something to counter that. And this is really a fairly groundbreaking idea in terms of VR control. And the controllers that they've come up with actually strap to the wrist and hand and can be let go completely of. And they just stay there because they're strapped to your hand. But you don't need to be gripping it. And this has brought in a whole new sort of functionality because this can register a full grip, a half grip, or even completely letting go. So something like they use an example of throwing a ball can be done much more naturally because you can literally just let go of the controller and it stays right attached to your hand. Furthermore, they have track pads on them, concave track pads on the top. With some other buttons. And this is still relatively early prototype stuff, but it looks like it's going to be something quite interesting in terms of VR control.
Yeah, I haven't used Oculus Touch or anything like that. I've only had my hands on the HTC Vive, and I mean, I actually enjoyed using the controllers, even though you're right, they are a little bulky and they not exactly the most graceful with control. But it was, yeah, I'm hoping that, like you said, that this gives a new edge for the Oculus, because I don't know, I kind of had that love of John Carmack when he was working on it. I was like, oh, please do well, Oculus, please do well.
Before it became the Facebook machine.
Yeah, before that happened, I was like, oh, fucking hell. How could you do this, John? How?
Honestly, they have to do something because if the sales numbers are anything to go by, PSVR is going to be kicking ass. They've already sold, I believe, like 30,000. They sold like 50,000 on the first day of PSVR.
Can the PS? How does the PlayStation even run that? Like, does it actually do a decent job?
Yeah,
Is it really low res?
honestly, from reviews I've seen, PlayStation VR is actually one of the best like overall experiences in VR that is available right now. You don't need the massive space that the Vive requires with the lighthouses, and apparently it's also incredibly comfortable. And it just seems to work very well. And there seems to be the big point is, and this is what is going to make VR is there's games for it, and the games work, and they're more than just tech demos. Like there's some actually good games.
How much does PSVR go for?
I believe it's cheaper than I have to look it up right now, but it's fairly affordable.
Yeah, that's what'll really sell it.
And a lot of people already have
games. It's the price.
It is $400.
Yeah, see, that's what does that Vive and Grips go for? Like $600.
It's like 600, I think. I didn't buy it.
600 to 800 respectively.
Yeah, it's a lot, and you don't need a PC. You have a PS4 already.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
It's
plus
the
with the Vive,
price
you got to
tag.
set up the cameras and you got to get a space cleared and all
Exactly.
that stuff. So it's a lot of
Though-
hassle.
Though if you have an HTC Vive, you can get a $500 computer that can do VR.
Yeah, but it's not going to be a great experience.
No, it was actually Kyle
I had a good
Lawson
time with it
from
actually, but
Bitwit,
it is
Sauce
lacking in
Sauce
terms
Network.
of content that you can get into at this point.
He did a video on it, and he actually benchmarked it, and yeah, he put it in a 480 in there, and it did a pretty nice job for $500. Yeah.
Although I still
Though
think
the Vift,
continue. I'm sorry.
the headset cost more than the PC at
Yeah.
that point, though. It's kind of
That was the point there, yeah.
I think too the big thing is just install base. I mean, the amount of people that buy high-end graphics cards, like even something like the 480, which is now sort of a mid-range, I suppose, like even that is relatively small. Whereas, I believe they've sold over like 40 million PlayStation 4s. So like the install base, the possible install base is just huge there. And I think the PSVR is really going to be what makes or breaks it for VR in terms of customer exception and things of that nature.
All right, I guess we can move on to our next topic. I think that's one that is very near and dear to Derek Krieger's heart with smart gun technology. It's actually something I've been wondering about for quite some time because I've tried this once before.
Everyone be careful not to trigger the internet.
Trigger, I see what you did there.
I know, right?
Well, if you don't have the proper fingerprint now, you're not going to be able to trigger them.
But
Thank
Is
you.
that a gun pun?
That was a gun pun. Huh?
The glorious gun.
I'm very punny if you haven't noticed.
Okay, well, the first thing is this recently came to prominence about last week. This guy named Kai Klopfer, who is a 19-year-old student, he developed a smart gun for a Glock. He retrofitted a Glock with a fingerprint sensor. As it stood now, smart gun technology, for those people who don't know, smart guns essentially are designed to have some connection to the user, so it can't be used by an unauthorized user. It can only be used by the person holding who rightfully owns the firearm. In this case, generally, it was done with some sort of RFID technology, usually in a bracelet or something of that nature, a pendant you wore. If it was in certain proximity to that pendant, it would work. There was problems with that, though, mainly interference from radio waves, things like that. Or if someone did get the firearm and was close enough to you, they could still use it, which would be bad. So it kind of defeated the purpose. So this is using a fingerprint sensor, which is built into the grip on the side. And essentially, you have to have constant fingerprint contact with the firearm for it to work. And at the same time, as this happened, about a few days later, a German company known as Armatics, who actually brought the first smart gun to market, the first pendant-based smart gun, a few years ago, that it was called the IP1. They just announced that next year they're also going to be releasing a fingerprint-based smart gun. And this brings up several questions, both into, it's the technology I think is interesting and it's something maybe worth pursuing, but several states, including New Jersey, I know for a fact, have legislation on the books that once a smart gun is available for sale, all other firearms cannot be sold. All firearms must then be smart guns. And the thing is, these smart guns don't work particularly well. So once they become to market, will we have to be forced to buy them? I'm not really sure.
Yeah, that was one thing that I was reading about from the Wall Street Journal article, that they were trying to mandate this and kind of shove it up the people's rear end here about this. And I think that was the wrong approach. I think that it should be offered. And I think we should, it should be something that not gun manufacturers, but like gun shops should have available as an option. But I think that the design that they talked about from the Kleifer, the 19-year-old guy, it was pretty impressive there because there were a lot of concerns like, well, what if the battery runs out? And it's like, well, you only need to charge it once a year. That's it. And on top of that, like, how good are the fingerprint sensors? It's like, well, it's actually a little bit better than an iPhone 7 in terms of the fingerprint sensitivity. I mean, yeah, if you get dirt on your hands or the gun gets wet or something like that, I think that may be something to take into consideration. It's not a perfect solution for keeping unauthorized hands off, but yet keeping it usable for the owner. But I think it actually has potential to. I think because we have a lot of here in America, we have so much headbutting over the sale of guns here and the usage of guns and gun safety. But I think this would be a potential olive branch that both sides of the aisle could get on. It's like, well, if we could get this to work pretty reliably, it might be a way to make it less of an issue. Although I think that politicians will still find a way to make it an issue. But
may I make a suggestion on the legislative side of things? Instead of having, once you have a smart gun on the market, every other gun is completely illegal, make it almost like a non-smart gun tax and make it cost a lot of money to not have a smart gun. Because that's
essentially the same thing.
Yeah, I don't think that's a good idea.
Well, no,
either,
because then it's. But I never said I never said make it a lot.
But you'd have to make it a lot, or no.
Because people aren't going to adopt the technology when the one we have now is pretty reliable for the user. I mean, the design of the gun has. I mean, yeah, there's been adaptations, but it's not really changed that much the past century.
No, a Glock is essentially the same as a pistol that was developed in 1900.
Yeah, so it's something that is reliable. People trust it, and they're not going to want to jump over, just because it's a potential new option for safety here. Especially because most gun owners, I don't know a gun owner who's really reckless with a gun. I don't know anybody who goes around waving a gun saying, "Oh, it's not loaded" or anything like that. Famous last words, or anything stupid like that. People who are legal gun owners anyway tend to be very responsible, and I just don't see this as something that most gun owners are going to feel a need to go purchase. Although I do think it may be for somebody who's never had a gun before and is nervous about it, like their children, for example, getting their hands on. Although I think you should lock up your guns if you have any brains and you have kids. But I guess that could be the argument that, maybe sales wise, it'll be people who are nervous about guns, and they'll be less nervous about it if they had the smart gun technology implemented.
I would say, though, if you're that nervous about having a firearm in your house, you probably shouldn't be owning a firearm.
Yeah.
Oh, I agree. But I mean, I guess that I'm just thinking at it from a sales pitch perspective there.
Well,
Yes.
the interesting thing is they actually have had from the biggest problem, it seems to be from a sales pitch perspective, is not people that are interested in the technology, but actually gun shops that are selling these. Because the original pistol, that IP1 that I talked about, that's been on the market for a while now. And a few gun shops that have actually sold it have gotten like death threats or like threatened or like had boycotts against them, like because they're selling this. And it's an interesting thing. And I understand the point, because especially if you live in a state like New Jersey that mandates once smart guns exist, all other guns are illegal. Like that's a valid threat. Although at the same time, I don't see sending death threats to business owners to be exactly the
they're not the ones who implemented that law. So I mean, it's. Yeah, I think I can see that being sent towards the legislature or something like that. What is wrong with you idiots? But the shop owners, yeah, that's a bit too far. That's you're misdirecting your anger here.
And I'm sure Cool Dude would have a very tinfoil filled possibility of smart guns.
I don't know. I mean,
it'll have some wireless capability. It'll be remotely disabled.
No, it really doesn't, because somebody else was talking about, also in the Wall Street Journal. I thought it was a very well written article. They were talking about, okay, with the charging port, they're like, oh, maybe you can hack the gun right there, or because it doesn't have wireless capability. It's not an RFID based system here. And they're like, no. It only accepts, it doesn't accept like digital input outside of, just regulating the flow of electricity that goes into the battery there. It doesn't do anything else. Like, it's not designed to be an SoC that has a complex operating system, or you could like input your own, you could just turn off the safety features remotely or something like that. That's not how it's designed.
Yeah. I mean, the pendant ones, I'd say that's a valid concern, because they did have issues with that, even with things like garage door openers fucking with them. So, and I mean, this, I will bring up, we're talking about this like it's a final thing. The demonstration of this, I believe he only got off 10 rounds without incident. The rest of the time, the fingerprint sensor didn't work. It was kind of a disaster. And the same thing happened with the IP1, the pendant, even that was the pendant-based system, which is probably less complicated in many ways than a fingerprint sensor, less prone to have issues from things like, not holding it right. I guess it's going to be the new iPhone, and you're going to call up Glock and they're going to be like, well, are you holding your pistol right? But really, I'm not necessarily inherently against smart guns. I think it's a valid thing to pursue, but I won't be carrying one. I mean, I carry a firearm every day for my protection, and I'm not going to rely on some electronical system that could potentially shut my gun down.
Right, or you get dirt on your hands, or you get too sweaty, or something like that. It's just too much of a high risk.
Yeah, as someone who's been in firefights, you tend to sweat when that's happening.
Oh yeah.
So, or you tense up, or you loosen your grip, or simply recoil could throw this off, and I don't see it as a very valid situation, a valid thing to, at least for most people who really care about the ultimate reliability of their firearm.
Right. But yeah, I think that's a very interesting topic though. So again, I think they should definitely pursue more development for that to make it something more reliable. But yeah, it's an interesting concept. But anyway, I'd like to transition into, it's kind of a continuation of last week when I spoke to you guys about quantum tunneling. This applies to graphene again, but this is something that they've been talking about for a while now for development purposes, for making graphene-based chips right now, integrated circuitry to replace silicon. And this week, I can definitely get into the details of what the uses are and how this phenomenon functions to our advantage. Last week, I spoke, that the nature of quantum tunneling is very counterintuitive because it does not obey classical physics as we know it. Just a 30-second overview of last week for anyone who's watching now and didn't see last week's episode. Go watch. I kind of recommend it. It's actually not that bad. That quantum tunneling is essentially where you have a subatomic particle and it penetrates a barrier without having the necessary energy to classically cross that barrier, like rolling a ball over a hill or shooting a bullet through a barrier. I think that this is a very counterintuitive prospect to people because they just have a hard time imagining something getting to the other side without the energy required classically to do so. And the probability of particles doing this, no matter how large the barrier is never at zero. It's mathematically like an asymptote. It gets closer and closer to zero the bigger the barrier is, but never truly reaches it. But now, with manufacturers like TSMC, Intel, Micron, Samsung, everyone who's been manufacturing silicon-based circuitry has had issues with silicon having quantum tunneling where you can't turn off the transistor when you get below 7 nanometer. And so a replacement material has been proposed for a while. They've been looking at carbon nanotubes, but they have now working models, prototypes that will use graphene. Them being, I think it was, hang on, let me take a look here. I don't have the article right in front of me, but essentially it's been developed at universities. I think Rice University has one, actually. I mentioned last week I had a friend there. And the way that they're using quantum tunneling to their advantage now to switch over with ones and zeros is that they have a bilayer of graphene. But what that does is you have with the graphene, it's like a honeycomb. It's a chicken wire or hexagons that have been created by nothing but carbon. And the shape of the electron clouds is kind of tetrahedral almost. They call it sp2 orbitals. You don't really need to know what that means. But essentially what it means is that the barrier with a graphene sheet or a graphene flake, I guess, between the as acting as the barrier here, when you get to 5 nanometers or even closer, they've established this as working models, is that you're going to have, it looks like a Mexican hat, which I know is kind of weird, but that's the mathematical dispersion of the electrons. And when the barrier crosses there, the electrons can be stored infinitely along the outer band gap, towards the bottom of the rim of the hat, if you're thinking along those lines visually. And when they apply voltage there, it's not enough voltage to classically cross the gap with the bilayer and go to the other side and create a bit of information. But because of the tunneling effect, they're deciding, let's stop fighting it. Let's not fight it anymore. Let's use it to switch on and off where, yeah, the probability is always greater than zero that it could cross anyway and you have a problem turning it off. But with this Mexican hat formation with the electron orbitals, we can store a lot of energy in that orbital before releasing. So you can actually control, based on the voltage, how much electron flow is going across the band gap. And this methodology they've been using is very energy efficient, a lot less energy required to make a bit of information. And then that's on top of the fact that graphene's, natural resistance to, or not natural resistance, but lack of electrical resistance as well means less heat buildup, which means that you're going to have devices that can overclock, that can, run at really high clock rates. You're talking maybe 100 gigahertz potentially. They've already pushed these past the 10 gigahertz rate at this point, and they had no issues really with the working protocol or prototypes. So, I mean, when's the last time you heard of a CPU potentially that could go 10 gigahertz, even with liquid nitrogen? Just forget it. You'd melt that sucker in a New York minute. But the point, though, is that there's a concept called negative differential resistance, where the more electricity you pump through a substance, like let's say a logic gate or something along that line, at the beginning, yeah, you get more electrical flow across when you increase the voltage. But then, quite paradoxically, it seems, the current actually drops significantly. So their point here is that when they make the switching from 0 to 1, that, yeah, you're not going to be at 0 voltage or 0 volts or just no current going through at all because of the quantum tunneling effect at those distances. They're going to have, like, let's say, just for the sake of argument, these aren't the actual numbers, but let's say, 100 millivolts is 0, and then 500 millivolts is 1. So instead of turning on and off, it's just two differing levels of current that will be assigned a value of 0 or 1. And since it requires a hell of a lot less energy and voltage to actually make the jump in this situation, it actually is going to turn out to our advantage. So, I mean, there's been, other materials that have been discussed for replacing silicon, like silicene, which involves triple bonds between silicon atoms. But the problem is that the moment you expose it to oxygen, it's a complete shit show and it reacts. And, but yeah, right now it seems that graphene is definitely pulling ahead of other materials. And I think that's something that we might see in the, not the near future, but maybe the next decade, we'll see something along the lines for a replacement. So. But yeah, I think we can move on to the next topic at this point. That would be based on space news that's been going on. One thing that was recently occurring was that China was launching some astronauts up to the Shenzhou station, which is, well, it's not really a station at this point. It's more like a bunch of pods connected together that they're trying to construct over the next decade. I think by 2020, they're hoping to be finished with it, but they're going to be doing some medical experiments, some biological experiments for about a month up there. It's not going to be as large as the International Space Station when they are finished, but I think they're really trying to have their own space-based research station equivalent that they can go up there and, perform experiments of interest for them. I think, I don't know exactly what else they plan to do long-term wise, or I don't even know the politics really that well with China and their space program and how they interact with the West on that. But it seems that they're more isolated if they're doing something like this in the first place. Another thing that happened this week was that, man, Hubble just keeps on, proving itself more useful than anybody was originally anticipating when they first launched it. But they were able to get in a lot more imagery with long distance observations with the, observing the greater cosmos. And the thing is, they found, okay, there's 200 trillion, something along those lines, 200 trillion observable galaxies at this point out through the universe. And yeah, that sounds like a lot, but you got to keep in mind that this is light that's had time to reach us at this point in the universe. One of the reasons that we have an idea of how old it is because we can tell how far away things are and when things suddenly vanish. 13.9 billion light years is the furthest we've ever seen. So that's why we have the estimation that we're going to be having a universe that is still expanding, but the light from past that point just has not had time to reach us yet. And on top of that, we were talking about RFIDs with the smart guns and how interference happens just with radio waves there. But imagine a particle of light, a photon, trying to cross 13.9 billion light years and not getting deflected, distorted, and just having constructive and deconstructive or destructive interference from other light sources as well, reaching Earth. So at this point, the fact that we've observed this many galaxies really isn't that surprising. It's just that at first glance, it may make you kind of drop your jaws like, wow, there is a lot of shit out there that we have just not even dipped our toes into at this point. And yeah, so they also, another space news thing is that they're going to be, that the Cygnus rocket launch happened in Virginia earlier this month. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with this program at all, which I would assume is most of you, this was when, I think it was 2 years ago, they had a launch in Virginia and the thing exploded on the launch pad, and it was a pretty big deal. I mean, I think the world was paying more attention to when SpaceX had their disaster the other month when their rocket blew up on the landing pad. It was a pretty big explosion, but the Cygnus one from before, I think it was 2 years ago, that it made one a hell of a fireball. And there were all kinds of, claims that, oh, people in DC could see the glow of the explosion. I'm like, I don't know if that's really true. I'm actually rather skeptical of that. But yeah, it's good that they actually managed to get this off the ground successfully to help rebuild confidence in their programs here. And I think that this year, since NASA got a larger budget approval, significantly larger, thank God, hopefully they'll be able to get back in the saddle with getting things up into space more consistently, and help build confidence in their capabilities again. But of course, it's not really NASA for this, but just space travel here in America in general. So, and actually, yeah, there's one last thing concerning space, is that hang on, let me see here. I think they're having a launch, a webcast that they're going to be having for, I think it was the Russians. I'm not really sure who launched it exactly, but there's a probe that they're sending to Mars, and I think they're going to have a launch webcast for when it lands. I think it's going to be 6 minutes long. So, if anybody's interested in taking a look at that, I think we may have a link in the description of the video once we upload it. But I will definitely be trying to get a look at that, or if they record it, have it up on YouTube, hopefully. So yeah, I think that's it for the space-based news for this week.
Okay, up next we have the DDoS attacks that were happening all over the internet, and whoever wants to join in their thoughts on this one, it's pretty much everything on the East Coast was hit at one point from DIN, so
I couldn't access Nexus mods. I was really pissed off.
So I actually read a little bit more on how this happened, what brought this about. And you remember how it's been brought up by, internet security expert people that, hey, the Internet of Thing devices really aren't that secure. We should do something about that. And then nothing was done. And then guess what? This is how they did what they did. Basically, they attacked with a botnet the Internet of Thing devices like webcams, DVRs, the like, because their security was super, super lax. And as a result, it DDoSed all those different sites.
Yeah, there was a lot of issues. I actually didn't notice. I used quite a few of these services and never had interruptions, but a lot of people were having problems all over.
Yeah, at work we were trying to access the protein online protein database that we usually access when we want to look at configurational charts and images of proteins, and we were not able to access it for quite a while. Same thing with the ncbi.gov site, actually, which was interesting because that's a .gov site. Usually, when that goes down, people start raising an eyebrow.
Yeah, it was pretty. Do we have any? Is there still any conclusion about who carried this out or for what motive? I mean, some people said it was Russia. Some people said it was 4chan in response to Julian Assange's internet being cut. What does anyone have any idea?
China.
Yeah, there was a couple rumors that it was Poodlecorp back at the attack again, but I'm not entirely sure they would do something like this.
Not sure. It's an interesting thing, but it does, I think, really, as we said with the Internet of Things, it shows how maybe we are running into this future a little bit haphazardly. We really have to secure these devices.
Well, I mean, I think that in general, at the tech, we always had the discussion of security and how it doesn't seem like our policies are really geared towards encryption in general. I keep wondering how many data. I know this is a DDoS attack, not necessarily a data breach, but it keeps making me wonder how long are we going to have issues like this where we have major data breaches and DDoS attacks before we start focusing on keeping things functional and stable yet secure. I mean, just what's the pressure that's needed to be applied to make that happen?
Something big, but at that point it might be too late. If something really big happens, who knows?
It would have to be something like, I don't know about nukes, but like something military based that would have to be hit that puts the public in jeopardy, or something along those lines that gets people scared and angry enough to actually really melt the phone lines in Washington for an extended period of time.
I can see that happening too, because as someone with a background in how the government operates, so much of what is done is so outdated in the government sphere, either because there's not funding or there's just not an understanding. Things are just run very old, outdated hardware and software that is incredibly vulnerable to attack, and it's quite actually frightening.
Right, because I mentioned this to Derek Krieger on the forums a few months ago, but I have several friends at NASA, and they were talking a long time with me about just how just antiquated the gear that they are using is, even with software, because they can't use modern software because it just won't be compatible with the hardware on a lot of the machines they use. And this new funding that they're getting, hopefully. Well, actually, they've already had some at SETI. They've had some upgrades recently to more modern-based equipment. But yeah, they were saying that, the Appropriations Committee was not giving us any money to upgrade because they said it was too expensive. But, contradictorily, that just made things more expensive because you're having to use ancient, antiquated hardware that doesn't work worth a damn with modern tasks. And it costs more to maintain and keep it running. So it's like you're not really making things cheaper by doing that.
It was a disaster.
Yeah, and they're making that as an excuse. See, this program isn't effective. This program isn't effective. To stop funding it. And, I'm like, I'm glad now that this year they've been getting a lot of upgrades at NASA and at SETI. My friends were very happy about that because they talked with the Senate's technological board or committee or whatever. I know Krieger might find this tickling, but Ted Cruz was actually part of that and was really dismayed about.
Ted Cruz.
I know. He was actually dismayed at what the gear they were using. He's like, how are you getting anything done? And they were actually impressed. He actually seemed to actually understand at least on the computer-based functions, like how things actually work. He knew way too much to have been briefed by his staffers, according to my friends. He knew too much technical information. He was like saying, no, you guys need to upgrade like now.
Yeah, it varied. Even on less complicated things in my office, like even things like video conferencing or things like that were just incredibly difficult with the hardware we had. We were a lot of our the things we were doing our work on were Pentium 4 based machines from like 2004 or 5, and it was just a disaster. We thankfully they recently, about a few months ago, I think 4 months ago, they upgraded us. All the workstations got upgraded, and for no apparent reason. So now the PC that's in my office actually has like an R9 370 in it or something. I was playing games on it at work once.
Oh, much envy.
Okay, on a related topic with security, there's a flaw in Intel chips that could make malware more potent, which is one of those interesting things that seems to happen every few years. Let's see here. Something called address space layout randomization, and it looks like Intel chips that bypass this protection. So,
is this an architectural flaw? Is it something that could just be updated with fixed with a microcode update, or what is the actual problem here? Do we know? Is it an easy fix for Intel, or is this something that we should be concerned about?
It looks like this feature or this flaw is deployed by all operating systems, so it's not so much the CPUs as much as the operating systems.
Well, that suggests then that this is more of a microcode issue or a firmware issue that they could maybe update. I mean, yeah, they're going to have to go through the code and get it done, but at least it's not a hardware-based problem. If it's a hardware-based problem, that's going to be very problematic. That's architectural flaws are huge, huge disasters financially for manufacturers when they're going to be fabricating chips in mass quantities.
Are these the latest Intel chipsets, or is the latest Intel chips, or is it like 4th or 5th generation? What
I think
Intel
it was
chips are there?
Haswell. I think it was Haswell-based chips that they were talking about.
Just another reason to buy AMD.
Yeah, I mean,
I know, right?
I'd buy AMD.
I'd buy AMD. No, I think this is actually something that AMD maybe could actually use as a marketing ploy. It's like, yeah, our Zen-based architecture, we do not have these problems. We have full compatibility with security here, and yeah, you're not going to have to worry about that with our product. That would be something I would be proposing as a marketing ploy on their part.
Someone needs to talk to AMD marketing. They need that shit Watt, man. I mean, Christ.
Oh, God.
They need better marketing.
Yeah, the marketing. I mean, I kind of there's some part of me that kind of feels tickled by the fact that they don't spend that, or don't seem to spend that much or put that much effort into marketing. But because we have so many issues with companies marketing, and it's usually a bunch of bullshit, or not bunch of bullshit, but at least slightly bullshit what they're promising once the product comes to market here. And I guess AMD could use it like, see, we don't need to talk about it, we just show you. But at the same time, it's like, no, you need to market better.
Then again, remember the Fury X hype train?
Yeah, that was kind of the meh heard around the world when that first was released.
But the most hilarious thing is, though, in some games now, under these new APIs, like the Fury X is like rivaling a 1070, or is in some cases faster.
Oh yeah, it's definitely a delayed
2
satisfaction.
years later.
Yeah, delayed satisfaction once the API caught up. It's like, yes, see, this had a purpose.
Yeah, it's actually really amazing to see. I know we're getting completely off topic now. It's just our massive boner for AMD that we all have here in the TEKsyndicate lounge. But the something like a 280X now and like a 770, like if you compare them, it's hilarious. Like a 270X is almost as fast as a 770 now.
Right. I mean, I wouldn't say I've got a boner for AMD. I've just got a boner for something actually being innovative for once, because Intel has just been, incrementally creeping along and just coasting. Really, they haven't really given me any reason to upgrade my rig. And I've had my CPU. It's a hex core. I've had the 3930K since like 2012. I've got no reason to upgrade still.
I do think that is about all our topics. So if anyone has anything they'd like to add or discuss, just open up the floor. Not to usurp caveman here, but
yeah, you can pretty much talk about whatever. I'll set a time for like 15-20 minutes, and then after this we might do an after party. Just depends on what everyone wants to do. So
I'm just gonna go play Doom for like a half an hour.
Oh, Nugget, you and your chainsaws.
Hey, I'm actually a big fan of the explosive shotgun.
Yeah, that is pretty fun once you get your hands on that.
I maybe haven't fully upgraded already.
Here is my question, though, getting back to gaming here, though. Because Deus Ex Mankind Divided, I mentioned last week that I was really disappointed with the state that came out in. And it seemed that, DX12 updates through Steam really didn't seem to do much of anything. At least for me, it didn't. I really would like to see if when Feral Interactive ports that over to Linux, to see if the Vulkan API really gives a boost to the AMD-based hardware. That would be delicious to see, because last time when Human Revolution came out, the director's cut or whatever the PC version was, Nixus, was that like 2 years after it first came out, or because I don't think it came out the same time that the console version did. Does anyone ever remember?
The first Deus, well, not the first Deus Ex, but
Human Revolution. Right? Yeah.
Yeah, it came out on Windows, PlayStation 3, and Xbox in August of 2011. The director's cut was Windows, PlayStation 3, Wii U, and Xbox 360 in 2013, and then Mac in 2014.
Yeah, so they had a lot of time to work on it and get it right, because I was really impressed when it first came out, the director's cut edition. That's the one I got, and it ran silky smooth. It was really well done. But I'm hoping that when Feral Interactive like ports that over to Linux, or maybe if Nixus completely does their own director's cut later on, like maybe next summer or the summer afterwards for a Steam summer sale, it might be worth a purchase for PC users. So actually, I was kind of wondering, we didn't say what we were drinking tonight. Dick Krieger, what are you drinking right now?
I am drinking some Glenlivet 12-year Scotch, just on the rocks.
Yeah, I'm having a Warsteiner Dunkel, so
Look at you.
it's good stuff.
I do have some of that in the fridge. I actually don't really care for it that much. I like the regular Warsteiner, but I'm not a huge fan of the Dunkel. I keep it around because some of my friends like dark beer, so when they come over, I keep that stocked. I just actually, in my basement, past like few weekends I've been doing it. I've been putting a bar in my basement, and so I'm just stocking up on all sorts of beverages now for the first, having some people over next weekend. So we're gonna christen that.
Are you planning on making anything yourself, like brewing anything yourself?
Yeah, actually, I was talking to my father actually, because he doesn't actually make anything, but he wanted to get into it, and he got a lot of stuff from one of our customers who was moving. He didn't want to keep it. A whole bunch of winemaking equipment actually. And so we might try that, and also a lot of it can be repurposed for making beer. So we're gonna try to make some beer. I'm probably gonna see him in a few weeks. So we're gonna go up there and put a batch together, and hopefully it'll be ready around Christmas time.
Yeah, I was thinking maybe next year making some mead, just because my bees did really well this year, so I actually got a significant amount of honey from them. Usually, from what other beekeepers were telling me, the first year they don't really produce that much, but mine, I got quite a bit out of them, and they still got plenty for the winter, but I will definitely be trying to make some mead next year and get that set up, see how that works out. Although it would be my first attempt at making anything alcoholic.
First time for everything.
I know, right? Cool dude.
Oh, what?
Cool dude is underage and would never partake of the alcohol.
Oh yeah, of course not.
I partake in the water.
Beer is mostly water.
Yeah, it is actually.
I need that pure.
The pure H2O.
It's organic water.
That Flint water is good, I hear.
Yeah, it's got a lot of minerals in it.
A lot of lead content. Yeah, man. Good for you.
Real good mineral water.
You can probably repackage.
It's my turn.
I like
sorry.
brown.
Oh, I'm drinking dehydrated water.
What?
What?
Dehydrated water.
What the fuck is that?
Are you filter feeding like SpongeBob on air?
I'm a chemist here, and you're kind of confusing me right now.
It's nothing. I'm not drinking anything.
Look at you.
Gotcha.
That's the joke.
Damn it, Nugget. Hey, Wolflaven, what have you been up to lately outside of work?
Well, I figured out how to actually adjust the settings in Reshape 3. There actually is a way to do it within the GUI. So, yeah. And as far as what I'm drinking IBC root beer.
Root beer. Ugh. It's not the right kind, Wolflaven.
Not root beer. Birch beer is good too.
And I'm just having cream soda, so.
Cream soda, the man. Dude, cream soda is good too.
Yeah, I never had a thing for cream soda. I mean, I can drink it. It's just not my preference there.
Well,
did you?
Go ahead, Jedi.
I was gonna say, Wolflaven, did you go to anything Oktoberfest in Atlanta this past couple of weeks or anything like that?
I wanted to, but I didn't have any chance to. I've always wanted to go, but I've been busy working the weekends.
Right. Yes, we had it in Decatur. It was pretty nice this year around. We get for the rest of you, we get a lot of beers over in Decatur, part of a section of Atlanta. That's a really, really big Oktoberfest celebration that they have, and it's a lot of choices they have. The Great Decatur Beer Festival along with it, so it's a lot of fun. So in Wolfhaven, you need to go sometime though. It's really good.
I'm planning to. Trust me. As soon as work settles, I am planning on going.
You ever go to Dragon Con here?
I haven't
No.
gone yet, but I'm hoping I can go next year.
Dude, it's like saying you never been to the Claremont Lounge. You're not a true Atlantan until you go, man.
Well, I'm technically a transfer to Atlanta.
Yeah. How long you been here in Atlanta?
Oh, I've been in Atlanta for, let's see now. Let's see, I graduated from my university in 2011, so 5 years now. I've been in Atlanta 5 years.
I guess I can forgive that for now. If you've been here much longer than that, it's like, yeah, man, what are you doing? Got to partake of the local finery and things of that nature. Plus, I think, Dragon Con, man, at least you don't even have to pay to go, you can just show up and watch the parades and things like that. So I definitely recommend it next time. Even if you don't have a costume set up or anything like that, you don't really need one to enjoy a lot of what's going on down there. So I think it's something you'd have a good time with.
Yeah, I'm planning to. I actually went to MomoCon.
MomoCon, I'm not familiar with that.
It's an anime convention for
Oh,
Atlanta.
okay.
I'm
Yeah.
not gonna say anything.
Because Skelters, if he's watching right now, he's jerking off going, yes, weebs.
Fucking weebs, man. Sorry.
It's all right. At least the anime I'm into is a little more serious than most people's.
It has the more plot. You're saying?
Yeah.
Lots of plot.
Plot's a plot, man. I tell you what.
Oh.
I thought it was funny because Steam recommended Nico Para for me the other day. I'm like,
Yeah, I
what
don't
the heck?
understand. Steam lately has just been throwing up all this shit onto my recommendations.
Yeah,
and,
I'm
the
like,
sales. I've never even seen this before in my life.
well,
When
it's
I
not even
remember-
that. I've downvoted, I'm not interested in this kind of thing before, and it's still trying to push it to me. I'm like, no, I don't want it.
Steam's red on my 480 when I bought it. Benchmark a game, whatever you want. Skelter said he would buy me Nico Power to benchmark. He never did that.
He never wanted that on his
I
Steam
have
Play
to.
Oh,
record.
Yeah, he didn't
Oh,
want to have that. No,
Dude, I would accept that.
No, Kat was on the forum saying he got it, and you kind of can type in your name. It's like a lot of text-based dialogue. But he's like 10 points for anyone who can guess what my name is among the ladies here. We're just like, okay, just tell us. He's like, master, my master. It's like, oh god, Kat. Kat would do something like that. Well, I'm surprised Skelters hasn't.
See, I actually will. Every Steam sale, when it goes on sale for $2, I'll buy one of the Sakura games. Just give them away to friends. Be like,
I don't know.
here you go.
Any of you guys play Transistor?
I did play it a while ago.
Yeah, I liked it a lot. It's kind of short, but it was actually pretty good.
Yeah, it wasn't bad. To bring the conversation back to slightly more manly, less weeb topics, I forgot to mention this, and I think Cool Dude especially will be very interested in this. I got my Form 4 back for my MP40. So,
Oh dear.
yeah, and I'm sending the last payment now, and then shortly I'll be having my MP40 in my possession, so I'm quite happy about that.
My dad's quite happy that he finally got his hybrid can.
So yeah, I'm going to be doing that, and I'm going to visit my friend. He's got an old World War II era BMW motorcycle and sidecar, so we're going to drive around screaming Schnell shooting stuff with an MP40.
So what you're saying
Oh, the
is you're gonna-
sidecars. Yes. My grandmother on my mom's side, that family over there in Germany, when they came over, they had one here. So
Nice.
they sold it a long time ago, which broke my heart when I found that out, but I've always wanted one. The
Were you gonna-
MP40
What'd you
Sorry,
say?
go ahead.
No. I was Nugget was going to say something.
Nothing of consequence. It's not good.
Nazis.
Yeah. Anyway, what were you saying, Joe?
I was going to say the MP40 was that German?
Yeah, it's a German submachine gun.
Okay, yeah.
It was the same essentially thing as the MP38, except it was modified for mass production. It was made. The MP38 was majority milled components. The MP40 is majority stamped, so it was cheaper and easier to manufacture. But it's a basic open bolt submachine gun. But the really interesting thing about this is it employs a pneumatic firing pin, and it operates on a constant recoil principle, which means that it's incredibly controllable even on fully automatic, which is awesome.
That's what I was just wondering. Is like, how good is the control and accuracy when you?
It's really impressive for an open bolt submachine gun. The rate of fire it's about like 550 to 600 rounds a minute, depending on the ammo you use, and you can just lay on the trigger and you can hold it probably within a 12-inch circle at like 50 yards, which is incredibly impressive for a submachine gun.
Well, once again, I would state, the German engineering.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive. Yeah, I just have to find ammo that will run it because this is something not a lot of people know about. But I'm sure, like, people who are firearm enthusiasts, they know like 9mm, like modern 9mm is like 115 grain bullet at like 1200, 1250 feet a second. All the German loads were actually 124 grain at about 13 to 1400 feet a second. They were incredibly high pressure loads. So they're actually approaching nearly 357 SIG territory. So a lot of the German guns don't run too well on modern 9mm. I have to just find. I might have to load it myself to get it to run properly.
No, you're gonna enjoy that part. That's just more of the fun for you.
Yeah, that's my main reason. I have one machine gun already. I have an M16A2, and that's big fun. So.
Do you usually what's your preference for weaponry? Do you like long range or are you more of a mid range guy?
I like pretty much everything. I did actually. I shot F class for a while, which is 1,000-yard ultra precision shooting, and now I do. It's not really exactly even a sanctioned sport necessarily by by IPSC, but it's primarily we have a set number of targets that we have to hit at extreme ranges with a set number of rounds. So I shoot. Last competition I was in, the farthest target was 1,500 meters. So
damn,
and you had to hit it within 3 shots in a certain amount of time limit. So that's something I quite enjoy. I hand load for that.
I've never aimed for a target that far away.
It's pretty difficult when you have to start thinking about the rotation of the earth and everything.
No, I was thinking about that and not even
the wind. Yeah, the wind. The wind is the biggest issue.
Yeah, because I was just like, what the hell, man. No, because you need 3-gun shooting?
No, but I do 2-gun. 2-gun is much more interesting to me than 3-gun. Because 2-gun is a bit more practical based and it's just a rifle and a pistol.
Right, because you're not carrying as many guns.
Yeah, and also a 3-gun is very much, the guns are generally modified extremely to be not actually practical in any way. They're not, it's more just for getting the best time. 2-gun is very much a practical shooting course. So I've done that quite a bit. I actually did an event not too long ago where I did a World War I themed event. I was inspired by Battlefield 1. I was inspired by Ian and Carl of InRange TV, and the local place that I do it at, I ran a 1917 Enfield and a M1911 pistol, not an A1, an original 1911 that I borrowed from a friend.
Nice.
I actually didn't come in last, and this was against people shooting AR-15s, so that was pretty impressive.
You mean an AR-15? Don't you mean an RPG?
A machine. Yeah, it's a machine gun. It shoots 1 million. It's a ghost gun. It shoots 1 million bullets a second.
Yeah, and they all are armor piercing and explosive rounds. All of them.
Yeah.
And on that bombshell.
Yeah.
Okay, so
500 mil.
That was the show today. And anybody want to say anything like in closing at all, or?
Yeah, I do.
Rip.
Yeah. The rep CommuniTEK, go LAN, go lounge, and buy AMD.
Okay, well, with that, we'll end up here with the stream, and might do an after party, but maybe not. We'll see. So
it will involve AMD.
AMD games only.